you heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report. Hey, this is a really important interview. You're going to hear a full sound bite, a rather lengthy sound bite that you've probably never heard before, and it's really important. Did they plan this whole thing more than a decade ago? We're going to get to that and more with my friend Gonz Shimura in just a minute. But first, I wanted to let you know about a really important site, redpillliving/SGT, a site built by patriots for patriots. So the next time you need just about anything, including coffee at really great prices, the world's best coffee, you can get it right here at redpillliving.com/SGT. And by the way, use coupon code SGT to save 10%. You need carbon 60, it's all right here. Or maybe liposomal vitamin C, which is what Cliff High recommends to combat coronavirus. It's all right here. Take a look around. You'll even find colloidal silver in super concentrate. It's all right here at redpillliving.com/SGT. I'll leave the link below. And by the way, any purchase over $45 ships for free. And remember, coupon code SGT will save you 10%. Okay, guys, let's begin. Boy, what a day to record this. It's Monday. I probably won't post this until Tuesday. I have on Gonz Shimura. My good friend Gonz is back. His YouTube channel is Face Like the Sun. And Gonz, you haven't been posting as much lately.
Well, I've been trying to actually, but yeah, it's been a little bit more difficult with the domestic duties involved with little babies.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's been rough with the YouTube trying to get any kind of traction going there. Just the views and the sharing and all that's getting smashed. And I know you know about that.
Yeah.
I think you guys, your SGT report has held up very well amidst all the algorithmic changes taking place on YouTube.
Yeah, no thanks to YouTube though. I mean, because they're not really getting my information out there. It's not showing up in the recommended columns anymore. And that's where you really get the traffic is people watch one of your videos and then they watch 3 more and they share them. So that's not happening. My view count is down. But yeah, what are you going to do? I mean, we just keep on fighting the good fight because as you know, the enemies of humanity are aligned against us. And what's going on right now with the markets is very concerning. I did a video about that on Sunday night. And of course, as we're having this conversation today, the Dow is down like 1,700 points, 6.5%, all on the back of this virus. And the point I've been trying to make, Gonz, is whether real or not, whether a bioweapon or not, whether released on purpose or by accident, it doesn't really matter because it's having a devastating effect on the global economy now.
Yeah, everything from the social behavior to the economy that we're seeing. And it's very interesting, the timing of it all. I know other guests have mentioned it, and it's a sentiment that's out there who are paying attention to these things. But really, the economic struggles are nothing new. People telling truth have been warning about the faultiness of the economy, especially recently with all the printing happening. And the not called quantitative easing taking place to uphold some of the banks and stuff. That was all a big sign, like, hey, something's really wrong here, and we might see some big corrections. We went a whole decade without a correction, I believe, or a major correction anyway. So that's not surprising, but it's very convenient, of course, that there is this what people are considering a black swan event. Although, again, like you mentioned, whether it's there's various levels here, whether there's an actual man-made bioengineered weapon involved here or not, it's definitely affecting society. I mean, I live out here in California. I'm in Orange County. So when they announced the state of emergency last week, the local Costco was kind of nuts. The parking lot was insane. I didn't go in. I just drove by and I was like, wow, that's a cesspool of people there. And people were tweeting and on social media talking about the local Targets and all the TP aisles are empty, and that kind of thing is typical. But it's very interesting to me because it's a lot of it is media hype and fear. And in the way I've looked at it is that it's it's kind of like a celebrity. The media has turned the virus into a celebrity of sorts, where anytime somebody or a group is reported to have it, then it's a big headline news. Anybody that passes away from it, it's big headline news. And if they did that with any other, any kind of other thing that is lethal to humanity, which is in terms of virus and disease and stuff, there's tons of it out there. People would have equal reactions of fear and starting to prep. And it's really interesting too, because it's not all negative. It's like, yeah, you should be prepping, you should be preparing your family and have protocols in line. They know what you're going to do if certain things happen, if there are bank runs, if there are food shortages. Those are all things that people in the truth community have been warning about for years. So in that sense, for the mass population to be pushed in that direction, it's like, well, it's not necessarily the worst thing, but maybe they're being a little bit manipulated in the process in terms of the actual reality of the situation. But at the same time, I do believe that there is an element, when you look at the evidence presented out there, that this is probably something that came about not just naturally. It was something that could have easily been made in a man-made or in a laboratory, maybe not with the intent of an outbreak per se, but certainly with the idea of maybe creating vaccines of different strains. Whatever it is, we know that Cas9 technology has become very widely available for very cheap, and so anybody with a little bit of knowledge and skill in biology can really get in there and start messing with stuff. So it's not really a surprise, but again, locally, it's affecting people around me anyway. My mother had to cancel a bunch of events that she was planning in the local community here. There's like schools shutting down. So yeah, but I do think that I do want to mention that as of this recording, just a few days ago, 3 days ago, President Trump signed, I think it was like an $8.3 billion spending bill or something. And in my opinion, that will sort of ease whatever is going on a little bit. That's a lot of money, 8.3 billion amidst a economic crash. You're going to pour in 8.3 billion to assist, all the healthcare stuff. And that's another angle to this, is it really exposes the lack of strength, or maybe clarity, transparency, and I would say clarity more so with groups like the CDC and other health people involved in the health industry. A lot of people have done the best they can independently. I've seen on social media and stuff, people are really trying to do, responsible reporting and stuff. But in terms of like a agreed upon approach to how to deal with this kind of thing, it seems to be kind of chaotic. So hopefully this bill does a little bit to ease some of the fears and at least the media spin. But as of now, I mean, it's had its effect already, whether you believe, again, it's real or not. The economy has tanked today, and that's all part of a larger play. We've seen CEOs step down recently, which is another layer to all of this. I could go on and on, but wherever you want to take it, Sean, because this is a topic that really reaches into every corner, every segment, every section of the truth that's out there, and hopefully people will start waking up to what's really going on, or at least investigate or have the desire to learn more than what they're being fed from the mainstream media.
Well, I'm going to play a soundbite here in a minute that I think is going to be extremely startling for folks. It was sent to me by my friend Ted, whose last name starts with a C. I'm not sure if he wants me to reveal his full name. So Ted C sent me a video that I'm going to play for you guys here in a second. And I guess the question I would have before I play it is, why are the powers that be not wanting us to talk about the origination point of this thing? Okay, and my question is this: why are they attacking people like Mike Adams and SGT Report? The Wall Street Journal did a hit piece on Mike and mentioned me in that hit piece last week because we dared to question the origins of this thing and infer that it may be a weaponized virus. They don't want us talking about that. And now up on the screen here, I have this news piece. More coronavirus censorship. Social media companies will partner with World Health Organization to censor information. Only the official narrative from those in the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention will soon be allowed on social media. Gonz, the question is, why? What are they covering up? Now, the soundbite I'm about to play for you may answer that question. This is from 2010. This video was released publicly in 2010. Keep that in mind as you hear what he's saying. His name is Bill Ryan. He's from Project Avalon. And he's talking about essentially a whistleblower that he spoke with, and he's recapping that conversation. Now, the whistleblower was at a meeting, several meetings, many meetings, in fact, in the city of London. He's formerly of the British military, high level, and he was able to attend meetings in the city of London that were also attended by many Masons, okay? Now, he's saying that this meeting that Bill's talking about took place in June 2005. All right, now I'm going to go over to this video. This is Bill Ryan, Project Avalon, talking about this June 2005 meeting, and Bill Ryan released this video and information in 2010. Now we're sitting in 2020, and this is what the whistleblower said was discussed at that meeting in 2005 in the city of London.
Everyone's really terrified about where this is going to go. There are all kinds of heavy controls over populations everywhere. And then the next thing that happens in this chess game that's being played is that biological weapons are released on China. He heard this being discussed in this meeting. They will release a flu-like virus that will be genetically targeted against the Chinese population. It's racially targeted against the Chinese people. It's designed to spread like wildfire and to knock out a large number of the Chinese people. And these people in this meeting were laughing about this. They said, China will catch a cold. Those were their words. China will catch a cold. And they were laughing about the fact that these biological weapons will wreak havoc among the Chinese population. And after that, then what effectively will be a kind of plague will actually spread right across the world to the West as well. And our source was not clear whether this was a Chinese retaliation or whether the thing would just spread out of control in the way that it would be very understandable if it did, whether it's racially targeted or not. These things actually mutate. So now you've got a situation where there's been a limited nuclear war in the Middle East. There's a pandemic that really is sweeping across the world and really is killing people very visibly. And you've got this totalitarian military lockdown in all the governments in the Western world because everyone's going to be in panic about all of this. And then, he said, then the real war starts.
I'll pause it right there. Could you hear that, Gonz?
I can, yeah.
All right. So obviously he mentioned a nuclear exchange. That didn't happen. He goes on to explain how they wanted to foster a nuclear war between, I think, Iran and Israel, perhaps the states. The point is that this pandemic that was predicted, that was talked about evidently in June 2005 and shared with the world here by Bill Ryan in 2010 is now happening, and it is sweeping the globe. So your reaction to any of that?
Yeah, really, it points to a couple things in my mind, and really it's centered around the UN 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, because in their own documents, it talks about, it's actually goal number 3.8, and it states, quote, achieve universal health coverage, including financial risk protection. Interesting that that's in there. Access to quality, essential healthcare services, and access to safe, effective, quality, and affordable essential medicines and vaccines for all. And so I think the thing here, and the vaccine issue has been the center of, it's just been a conflicting issue for a long time in the world of truth. But I think this is where a lot of this stuff converges, where it really is going to tear the society apart if an authoritative figure comes in and says, you have to have this vaccine. Look at this, disease, this virus that's out there. It's killing people, and we need to vaccinate you. And if you're not going to vaccinate, you're not going to be able to participate in our infrastructure. And that's where it starts getting into really crazy stuff. Mark of the Beast, prophetic stuff, biblical stuff, just wild things that people couldn't have imagined happening with a dystopian future. That sort of thing becomes really tangible in a world where the United Nations and other governing institutions and those who are wealthy behind the wall of power, and they demand a sort of again, a vaccination, a health, I don't know, a legal health check type of thing to participate or be accepted into the society. It's really kind of troubling. And there's actually a second part to this, 3.B in their goals. And this one's a little more long-winded, but I'll read the whole thing because I think it shows how some of these institutions and groups, how they jumble everything and make it confusing for people to understand. It says here, quote, support the research and development of vaccines and medicines for the communicable and non-communicable diseases that primarily affect developing countries, provide access to affordable, essential medicines and vaccines in accordance with the Doha Declaration on the TRIPS Agreement and Public Health, which affirms the right of developing countries to use to the full the provisions in the agreement on trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights regarding flexibilities to protect public health and, in particular, provide access to medicines for all. And it's just super long-winded and whatever. But the point is that in order for the UN 2030 agenda to really have a purpose, for this type of goal to be necessary, you need a problem big enough to cause a worldwide change or worldwide behavioral panic that will accept a type of vaccine. So I know that's very, that's going to get your channel or at least this video demonetized, but that's kind of the truth
they all
of the
get
matter.
Demonetized. Don't worry about that. I haven't had one get monetized in a while.
Sure. Yeah. But I think that's a major part of this. And of course they've been planning this, whether there's an actual physical real part to this one. I think there is. I think there's an actual virus out there doing stuff. But again, like a celebrity, you trace it and you put it in the media, and the type of panic and hype is crazy. But at the same time, yeah, of course, it should be very uncomfortable for us to look at this and say, wow, this is kind of convenient for a lot of the for at least globalism in sort of the established phrase to slow down and to back off, and world trade to slow down. And it's an opportunity for infrastructure change and things like that. So I think we're in for some very turbulent times with a lot of, again, movement. The people with power, they want movement. They want the chess pieces, configured in a certain way. And I think a lot of people can relate to this sentiment, which is that there's a transfer of wealth taking place, not to the people really, but just another generation, the children of the elite, the Soros generation, their kids, they're sort of taking over the reins. And I think there's a level of, let's get on with this. Come on, let's speed things up. And perhaps that is why they're pulling some levers, they're pushing some buttons in the background to start to implement some of these planned events, and seeing the effects of it and taking advantage of it tangibly, like we see in the stock market.
One of the things that concerns me, and I've tried to express this repeatedly in videos, Gonz, if they allow this thing to continue, if it's fostered, if it's nurtured, if it's allowed to continue, and I'm talking about either the spread of this virus or the spread of the contagion in the markets, the financial markets, this collapse that they will bring on will be devastating. And I see a lot in the comments. People say bring on the collapse because they hate this corrupt system. I get that. But I think what people are missing, Gonz, is just how dire our situation could be. And that's the problem, Gonz. These people are malevolent. I mean, according to that whistleblower, they were laughing about this plan in June 2005. They think it's funny to exterminate people, to have these manufactured crises. Yeah.
And people think eugenics died in the 20th century, but it just exists in a much more shadowy form now. And it's troubling. But this is, I think you bring up valid points that where this can go. But I think in my, on my channel and things that I talk about, I always try to bring in the hope, because there's an eternal aspect to this, and we're in this period of time where, man, it is very unique, very, very unique. You can be, I always bring it back to the Bible. Obviously, I know not everyone in your audience is a Christian, but I'll bring this up as sort of a relevant thing, and not just like trying to push Bible down your throat or something. But there's a passage in the book of Daniel, and it's Daniel 12:4, and it says, "But you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall increase." And this aspect of, first off, knowledge increasing, there's that famous Kennedy quote, "A rising tide raises all ships." I think it was Kennedy. That effect is true when it comes to knowledge and our current era of man's history. And that includes people who are like Christians or spiritual or whatever, to the physicists at CERN who might be atheists, or maybe a mystical occultist or something. The knowledge base for mankind has just exploded in the last, I don't know, few decades, really. And it's definitely different than most of recorded human history. So it's interesting that, several thousand years ago, they were talking about this knowledge explosion at the time of the end, so to speak. And the other part of it is many will go to and fro. And this topic of the virus it's really predicated, again, on this travel, the transportation, and being in public, and the movement of people and stuff like that. So it's brought a spotlight to those topics and this topic of globalization. And I say all that to say that it's meant to happen in a sense that it's prophesied to happen, but the greater hope here is that there's something larger here going on. And while there may be some casualties on the front line, if you have an eternal hope in something that's beyond and transcendent, then there's nothing really you have to fear. And there's some scriptures in the Bible about, we have not been given a spirit of fear, but a spirit of tenderness and sound mind. And that's, I think, the approach we should have with this stuff. Approach it with a sound mind, with a sober mind, and thinking clearly about these issues. And that means to do certain preparations that the truth community at large, the prepper community at large has been talking about. There's products out there that can help, keep things sustained in your home. And I think that's not a bad idea. But there's also, ways you can spread information. And that's really the battle, the front lines of the battle of where we're at with something like YouTube. I think YouTube is just done at this point. If you want to really get relevant news and information that it contradicts the mainstream, it's going to have to come from somewhere else, because it's just going to lock down more and more. And this apparatus that you mentioned, the Masons, through tentacles like the UN, through the government, and again, with the economy side of things, yeah, it can be both ways. A gold standard. I have a hard time believing that they're going to go back to a gold standard. They might. That's just my personal opinion. It just doesn't. It's too. I don't know. It's just too good for the people in a sense. If you really do that, I think there's a potential there. If I know you're familiar with Cliff High.
Oh yeah.
And I don't agree with a lot of the things he talks about with the woo-woo stuff, but he does bring up interesting points about a potential sci-fi future. And he's mentioned how there could be a world where the modern computing gets based on precious metals, and that'll completely shift around the way the economy works. And that could be a way to go back to the gold standard. But either way, there's going to be a layer of digitization, this layer of computing involved, I think, is the controllers also want. And that's where we, I think, have to educate ourselves more in the front of, hey, how do you secure yourself? How do you secure your own monies? How do you secure your own digital money? That's a topic that most people don't consider, because most people think, my bank's or my money's in a bank account, we're good to go. But really, those are just numbers on a screen too. It's just behind a bank. But there are other ways you can hold your digital assets. And you mentioned Bitcoin earlier, and it's getting smashed too, which is a whole other thing as we record this. But, there are other ways of doing things. And it's just this education level, this level of knowledge that continues to increase, that I think we just have to keep moving forward. We got to keep helping each other out here and doing the best we can. And again, for me, it's like there's a certain element of palpable fear in terms of the people around me and all this kind of stuff. But I think for someone like myself, and with my faith, I'm kind of the guy that's like, yeah, but also I see that like I've been looking at these issues for a long time. It doesn't surprise me that this has been planned. It wouldn't nothing really surprises me anymore at this point. That it's potentially from some kind of experiment in China with human animal hybrids. Yeah, that's a possibility. I mean, that's the thing. We're messing with the genomic level stuff at that level. This was bound to happen eventually, this type of thing. And as I said, the level of fear and panic that it has caused this go round, it feels like every time they do a sort of pandemic type thing, it's more intense, more intense in fear, more intense in the actual effect of it. And all of it has reasonable explanations as to, for example, Ebola. There's some stuff out there that suggests that it wasn't just a weird accident. It was pretty planted in a certain place in Africa. So there's definitely this racial targeting going on. And, those are really hairy topics, Sean. I mean, I think I have my opinions about, what the infrastructure, the hierarchy looks like in this sort of a race, attack type of thing. But those are challenging issues. And for me, as being an Asian American, I haven't experienced any kind of racism concerning the virus locally here. But being in California, 14%, I think, of the population of California is Chinese. So certainly a different kind of feeling going on in certain areas. I haven't experienced, again, I haven't been out a whole lot, but nothing, explicit. But, there's a sense of panic and fear, which is, again, really interesting from my perspective, because part of me knows that like this is all just a big show, and all these people around me are acting like they're part of the big film, like the big Contagion film, like they're extras in this weird sci-fi documentary they're making. But I'm trying to keep an even keel and move forward here and just help people out and understand that it's okay. You don't have to fear. Yeah, do the things you need to do to prepare. But in terms of panic, I think that's what they want. They want people to panic, right? Especially a day like today when the markets tank and everything's tanking, and the coronavirus and more quarantine, and if anybody gets quarantined, I'll let you guys know. I know people were tweeting and sending video off of the cruise ships that were locked out and stuff. So again, there's a tangible thing to this. So we just got to keep our eyes peeled and just kind of go along and pray for one another, help each other out. I don't know, Sean, you kind of got me rambling about some stuff, but I'm trying to keep some hope here too, because they can only control us as much as we let them influence our behavior. And that's the challenging part, right? Because so many people are just asleep at the wheel that it's easy to control their behavior, but we have to counter that and at least test what's behind all this. And I think that's our duty to do, just as common citizens out here.
Well, I've been saying that there's no reason to panic. I don't want people to panic, but just reporting on the facts of this thing, trying to find the facts and then report on them, you get called a fearmonger. And I think there was a orchestrated effort to try to call many of us who are talking about this thing, to call us fearmongers, to get us to shut up. I think that was the organized effort, the orchestrated effort, because we don't want people to panic. We want people to plan, because as much as we all have self-determination, we live in a civilization that they've built. The controllers, these malevolent people, have built this civilization where 95, 98, 99% of us are reliant on a just-in-time food delivery system. We're not farmers. We're not growing our own food. We're dependent on this system that they've built. And if they burn it down, we're going to be hungry, and then you're going to see real panic. And that's what I want people to understand. We don't want this system to burn down. We need a new system that's introduced slowly, deliberately, and in a way that doesn't cause what's happening now. See, they're really great at burning stuff down. We build stuff up. It takes time to build something beautiful, whether it's a building or raising a child or whatever, and they can burn it all down overnight. That's what's so despicable about these, I'll just say it, these Satanists. The people essentially that were in that June 2005 meeting in the city of London, these people are malevolent, and they hate humanity, and they laugh about their plans for hurting us. So that's what I want people to understand, is that we live in a very fragile system, in a very fragile civilization that's held together by the thin thread of faith, Gonz.
Yeah, yeah, the levers of civilization, the power of the few, and the consolidation of power with the advent of the technological revolution. As we're entering the fourth industrial revolution, there the consolidation is real at this point, and they can really do whatever they want in terms of price, in terms of infrastructure. So yeah, in that regard, it's definitely a scary time because we're seeing the shakeup here. Because we know that the system they built was, some argue that it was meant to be torn down, and there's various angles to this that I think people have shared over the years. But yeah, in terms of the individuals themselves, this is where it gets really weird and fringy for me, because uh, there's biblical precedents to hybridity or chimeric activity, and that goes back to Genesis 6 and the reason for the great flood and all this kind of stuff. And if we're talking about some kind of genetic level thing, I'm really, you say these people hate humanity, Sean, and I just wonder how much of them are really still human in the human sense of, biological human. And that could mean some kind of genetic hybridization. It could mean machine integration, whatever the thing is.
Or spiritually speaking. I
Well,
mean, look,
spiritually, it's
if
100%.
you sell your soul over to these
Yes.
demonic powers, you've already lost the part of humanity that makes you special and beautiful. You've lost your connectiveness to God, and you've lost your connection to others, and you literally become anti-human. I mean,
Yeah.
so to that degree, spiritually speaking, these
Right.
people are not human.
Yes, and that is the source of this. That is really the core of this, is the spiritual war that we're in. Ephesians 6:12 talks about how we wrestle not against flesh and blood, and it's brought up over and over again. But we're really wrestling against these not non-human but corporal entities, or actual entities that exist. But again, if they are somehow manifesting, and this is what the whole Nephilim topic is about. It's these ungodly hybrids between gods, or watchers, as they were called, and men, and that caused a disruption in God's created order, each after their own kind. But now there's this hybrid, and what is the soul that exists in that? What is the spirit? And there's some extra biblical text. Many have theorized that the demons that we see in the New Testament, and just demons in general, are those disembodied spirits of the Nephilim who died in the flood, who were killed in the flood, because their physical existence, so to speak, was an abomination, and thus their spirit was, they're demonic. And so this is what's similar to what's happening when I think when you say Satanists and stuff, these folks at the top are likely no longer human in a you and I human sense, and maybe they are plugged into who knows what. And this is really, I know it sounds really bizarre and weird, but look at all the science fiction. Look at all the cultural stuff taking place. Look at the money being poured into brain-machine interface. Look at the money being poured into these types of technologies, as well as all the crash and all the stuff and the virus and all the fear-mongering and stuff happening. They've been building this thing forever. This is just, the virus thing is really another tentacle, maybe a bigger rollout of one of these things, but it's just another rollout. They've been doing all the building in the background for the type of system they want to build. And when you look at it from that angle, you start to see, hey, maybe these people are really doing some stuff that are unethical just on a baseline level, but also quite frightening. I mean, even if you're an atheist, even if you're not a Christian or a Bible believer or anything like that, you should be kind of like, hey, where are we going with all of this? If there are a group of people that we don't know, they're behind closed doors, that control all this stuff, who are getting all the enhancements that medicine can offer, the cutting edge medicine, the black market medicine that you don't get to hear about, that don't get shared to the public because they keep the public sick. They need a sick public to keep the system working. And so these guys, they get all the treatment, they live longer, and who knows what they're plugged into or what kind of genetic changes they've made. And I know it's a weird thing, but we got to talk about that in terms of what might be going on here if we're going to talk about this fear level thing. And again, come to terms with that. And it's like, this is really happening. Here's a really tangible piece of evidence to suggest that that's where we're headed. And I know it's no surprise to a lot of your listeners, but perhaps there's people out there who are still skeptical that there's none of this kind of weird stuff going on. There's a politician. His name is Zoltan Istvan. You may have talked about him on your channel. He was part of the transhumanist party, and he actually stopped being the head of the transhumanist party. And now that party is actually, they're running elections to see who's going to represent the transhumanist party. And there's one guy who basically came out and claimed he was an alien hybrid. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. He said he's an alien hybrid running for the transhumanist party. I don't know, but that's going on over there. Meanwhile, quietly, Zoltan Istvan has been running in the Republican primaries. His name has been on ballots and stuff. And this is a politician. Again, he's running with this slogan, upgrading America. And he's a transhumanist, but he's running for the Republican Party. And he's changed some of his lingo. It's been really fascinating to track him on Canary Cry News Talk and stuff. We've been looking at some of the things he's been saying on stage and whatnot. And this is a man who already has a microchip implanted in his hand. Okay, so we're not talking about, hey, maybe in the future, this or that. No, this politician who was running, aspirations to become president, and who knows if he'll ever get there. But the movement of politics in all of this is very fascinating as well. I know a lot of Trump fans out there, but at the same time, it's like the whole system is moving in this direction either way. And maybe there's some good guys trying to fight the good fight from the inside, but hard to really make, massive society level changes that are positive when the system is rigged against them. So I think that's why we're seeing the cracks here. And again, we live in a very supernatural world. I don't think people get that science fiction. I keep this slogan. Somebody said it. I don't know who said it. I apologize if I'm stealing someone's quote here, but science fiction was a documentary. Mm-hmm. That sentiment is so true. You see science fiction, not just in the predictive programming sense, but really to try to envision what type of control, what type of world some of these elite want. I think they've done their storyboarding through science fiction for the most part in the last half century or so. And we're starting to see some of that play out in real life.
Well, unfortunately, according to Bill Ryan, I could continue to play that clip of him. But what I think I'll do is just put the link to that 1 hour video of him telling the story below, so you guys can watch it for yourself. But he goes on to say, you mentioned what kind of world they want. Well, according to Bill and this City of London whistleblower, what they want is a depopulation plan. And that's what this pandemic, this China cold is. It's, according to Bill Ryan and the whistleblower, it's a depopulation plan. And according to the whistleblower, their goal, 50% reduction in population. So that's what's so damn scary about this thing. They've got us by the balls as it pertains to the economy. And I'd like to end this on a bright note. And if you have a favorite Bible passage that you'd want to share with us to try to uplift us, Gonz, and because this is a spiritual war. One thing that you and I have always agreed on from day one, and we became fast friends because of it, you and I and most of our audience realizes there's spiritual warfare being waged on earth, and it's a war against humanity. It really is. It's a war between light and dark, between angelic powers and demonic powers, and unfortunately, the enemies of humanity embrace the demonic side or the satanic side. So that's the sad truth in my view. So please do ring us out with words of hope if you can.
Yeah, this is Psalm 91. And Psalms are always a good place to go to for this kind of thing. But Psalm 91, it says, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say to the Lord, you are my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. Surely he will deliver you from the snare of the fowler and from the deadly plague. He will cover you with his feathers. Under his wings you'll find refuge. His faithfulness is a shield and rampart. You will not fear the terror of the night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the calamity that destroys at noon." So I think that covers a lot of the depopulation plans there. And in terms of protection and having refuge in the Lord, if you're good with God, you really have nothing to fear in terms of the physical body and what can happen to it. And I think that's the kind of confidence level we need to have to fight this thing, really, as you said, the spiritual war, because if you're just going at this from the material side of things, you're actually fighting handicapped, because they're really into the spiritual. They understand the interface with the physical world and the spiritual world, and they've, they're trying to control it from that angle as well. And that's where the whole prophecies of the man of sin trying to call himself and declaring himself God, that I think that's where all of that stems from. And the spirit of Antichrist, which has been here since the beginning, the big tip there in 1 John 4 being that test the spirits, because that will be the most important thing as we move on.
Yeah, well, I thank you for that, Gonz. And do you want to tell people about Canary Cry Radio and, your any websites or your YouTube channel? Let's drive some traffic back to you. Maybe you can pick up some subscribers.
Yeah, we got a few things going on. We obviously, canarycryradio.com is the podcast. canarycrynewstalk.com is the more consistent podcast where we bring you relevant news every week, tracking people like Zoltan, tracking the flippy robot arm that's slowly taking over restaurants down here, doing all that kind of stuff on Canary Cry News Talk. And then Face Like the Sun on YouTube, facelikthesun.net on the internet. And, there is something I want to mention, because a couple things actually. One, canarycry.community that's the actual domain, canarycry.community. It's its own social media forum hub. And there's close to 1,000 people in there, and it's just like-minded people talking about these issues. The thread for the virus is huge. People have shared all kinds of information and thoughts and opinions and links, and it's a great resource to have if you're just not wanting to dig through it yourself, and you want the community to do that work for you. It's a place to interact with like-minded people. So canarycry.community, and I think that's it. The Patreon stuff, patreon.com/facelikethesun. And I know you've promoted in the past other types of tech, but things like Brave browser, everyone should be using the Brave browser, unstoppable domains. There's all kinds of little technologies that are coming out that are supposed to help protect our sovereignty on the internet. And so those are things that I think we got to continue to educate the public on and use. We got to use it. We actually have to use it in order for it to be effective. So that's all it right there.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time today, Gonz. And, I like how you're trying to see this thing as a, cup half full situation. So we'll continue to cover these issues. I mean, these are scary issues, and and they're scary times, because we know that the deck is really stacked against humanity. These people hold so many of the cards because they've controlled our monetary system and the central bank since, for 3 centuries now or more. All right. Well, probably going all the way back to the days of Babylon.
For sure. And I will just, one last thing to say is that the whole book of Revelation is about the apocalypse of Jesus Christ and the judgment of the wicked. And so if you want to read some hope, go to the book of Revelation and read it. It's the judgment of the wicked. It's these folks that are in control. What happens to them? And it requires a transcendent source to really get at the heart of rooting out to the corruption once and for all. So that's the great hope that we have.
All right. Guys, our guest has been the one, the only Gonz Shimura. Thank you, Gonz.
Thanks, Sean. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very, very, very much appreciate it. A shout out to our patrons for keeping us in this fight for truth and real news. And I'd remind you guys, for real news 24/7, you can visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. There's real news there all day, every day, 24/7. So please do visit us directly. And thank you, guys. God bless you all. Bye-bye.
Put on the full armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground.